So we're a couple minutes early here, so we'll just give a moment for people to come in, but people are coming on. Hey, Jess, Carol, your pickles are here. Michelle, good to see y'all.
And I can see one of my sisters, Sheila's online, and people from Chudley Writers and Cancer Lifeline, and Linda from B-Lab.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I just enabled the chat. I keep forgetting that Zoom has made this has made it that you have to enable it now, which is super annoying. But if you need closed captioning, that is available for you. Just click on the CC button. We did set this up as a webinar today so that we would be able to get registrations and just make it easier for everyone getting the information that they needed to join us today. But feel free to chat it up, talk to Elizabeth or Kate, depending on how you know her, in the chat. And we're going to give just like one more minute for people to come on in here, and then we will kick things off and get started. So thank you, Jess. I appreciate that. Launch days are just so much fun. We love celebrating, especially most of us are authors and some of you are friends and family. It's just a really fun, a fun way to celebrate what is an enormous accomplishment. And this is your, how many books now?
Sixth novel. I've got 6 novels, 4 books of short stories, and the business writing series.
Yeah, so wow, that's amazing. Amazing. All right, well, let's go ahead and officially kick this off. We are here today to celebrate author Elizabeth Ducie. Some of you know her as Kate in the real world, but I'm going to call her Elizabeth just to keep in character with the author persona and all of those types of things. And we are here to talk about her big book launch, which happened on October 18th, so just 2 days ago, Villainy at the Village Store, a completely gripping cozy mystery set in an English village. And this is the second book in the Chelmsford Chronicles. So first and foremost, just, I mean, congratulations. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very happy, very relieved to have it over. But this afternoon I started writing book 3. So I was sitting in the office thinking, I've got nothing to do. What shall I do? I know, I'll do the next bit. So
I'll start writing. Well, I am curious, for those of you in the audience, have you read the book? Have you started reading the book? Is it still on your TBR list? And of course, without giving anything away, because it is a murder mystery, so nobody's allowed to share any spoilers. What are your thoughts if you are reading it? Carol said she's read it and loved it. Lisa's read it and loved it. Michelle just finished it. I'll have to say the writing and the descriptions are pretty amazing. So great job. Okay, well, we actually have a plan. We have an agenda of things to do. So we're not just going to sit here and chat at you today. Elizabeth has some fun things for you. So I'm going to let you go ahead and share your slides so that we can get into our official presentation today. And everybody's loving the book so far, so that's amazing. So I'm going to just tell you, as a publisher and an author myself, for those of you who aren't aware, reviews are one of the most important things that an author can have, and they are your biggest sign of love and respect to an author. So whether it's on Goodreads or Amazon or whatever platform you're using, I would strongly encourage you to go on over to one or multiple places and leave a review. It really does help other readers determine if they want to purchase the book, and it helps the author's rankings go up. And there's just so many things that if you're not in the author world, you may not even realize how critical those reviews are. So please, 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 if you finished it, take a moment and get on over and review. And I'm going to be quiet now so that we can kick this off.
Okay, thank you very much, Alexa. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for coming and helping me celebrate the launch of Villainy at the Village Store. I'm going to just do a little bit of background. I know some of you already have read book one, but I'm going to just give you a bit of background because the novels, I said this is my 6th novel, and the first 4 I wrote were all set in Southern Africa, Russia, Ukraine, Latin America. And I decided I wanted to write something closer to home, but I wanted to write it without being run out of town. So I needed to be able to merge reality with fiction. And I did that by inventing a village called Coomsford, which is a typical English village, and it's just down the road from Chudley, which is the town that I live in. So typically English village, not far from Chudley. The main buildings, Mountjoy Manor, which is the big manor house here, which is where Simon Mountjoy, the victim of the first murder, lived. The Falls is a gastropub with rooms, and that's very important to the stories because that's where 2 of my amateur sleuths live. There's Cozy Corner, the cafe and grocery store. That we have the school, we have the church there, and we have the village green. And like most villages, and certainly like the town that I live in, it's a mixture of folks. When I say old folks, I don't necessarily mean in the elderly stage, but people that have lived there all their lives, and incomers. And any rural community is very much made up of long-term people and newcomers, and a certain amount of the tension is between them. So that was the setting for the first book, and this road here at the top leads to a new estate, and that estate is called the Chestnuts. So now we're looking at it from a different angle. That's the village green, and the Falls, the pub, is down here at the bottom. Okay, it's made up of semi-detached new builds. There's some on the other side of the road that we can't see. The road is called Hill View, and if you lived in Devon, you'd know why I call it that. And at the end, the only old buildings in the new estate are the 3 converted longhouses here, one of which is the laundrette, one is a hairdresser, and one is the village store that of the title of the book. They are owned by Stanley Wentworth, and he was supported in setting up this venture a few years ago by Simon Mountjoy, he of the first book. So that's one of the conflicts between Stanley and the rest of some of the members of the village. We have in the village store, there is a combination of post office, newsagent, and grocery store. And that's all I want to say about Coomsford, but I wanted just to remind you the basis of a cozy murder. There's 2 or 3 things about cozy murders, and I know some people think of it as a bit of a conflict, sort of a contradiction in terms to have a cozy murder. But the thing about a cozy murder is there's a puzzle. We all love puzzles. We all love trying to pit our wits against the author and try and find out who done it before the author tells us. But a cozy mystery, there's no gore, there's no violence, there's no sex, and there's no swearing. I think I usually allow myself 1 rude word in the whole book, and I don't think I even did that this time. So they're innocuous. They're the sort of books that you can certainly give to your grandmother or your great aunt for Christmas. They are generally there are generally amateur sleuths. Poirot, I guess, was an exception to that rule, but generally they're amateur sleuths rather than the police, although they may work with the police. The victim is usually the most unpleasant person around, and therefore, to a certain extent, a lot of people don't mourn them when they get killed. The murderer is always found, and no children and animals are harmed in the course of the story. So these are my three sleuths that we met in the last book, and they're back again in this one. Charlie Jones at the top there, she's English, she's a Devonian. She's in her late 50s, and I have to say, like a lot of us, she's using a headshot that's a little bit younger than she is, but she is actually in her late 50s. One of the things I've learned with hindsight is if you start writing a series of books and you start set in 2004, and then you take the character into the second book and you're still writing about her in 2022, you should have started with her being a lot younger in the first place. But anyway, it is what it is. She used to be very fit because she used to be a former Secret Service agent, but she's now she's running the pub in Chelmsford, and she still tries to keep fit, but she's not quite as good as she used to be. Annie MacLeod is Scottish. She comes from the Isle of Skye. She's in her mid-40s and she loves colourful hair. When Charlie first met her, her hair was the colour of my jumper, but she's gradually toned it down over the years, but she still likes a bright colour. She's a former estate agent, but she now runs the pub with Charlie. They are both business partners and life partners, and they are the mothers of a young girl, Susie, who is 11. And therefore, over the next few books, I can bring her more into the story. We've got the terrible teens to go through and things like that. And then we have Rowan Banerjee, he's a Mancunian, second generation Indian. He's in his mid-30s, he's very fit. He's a keen runner, and he's trying to encourage Charlie to get fit again, but it hasn't necessarily succeeded yet. He's a former undercover police officer who had to leave. One of his cases went rather pear-shaped, and he left, and he's now a private detective. He lives in Teignmouth, which is one of the seaside towns not far from Chelmsford, and to supplement his income, he also works occasionally in either the Falls or the cafe. So he's around quite a lot. Right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to read you a very short piece from the book. But before I do, I just want to introduce you to Stanley Wentworth. And it's not giving anything away to say that he's the victim of this book, because that's what the back shows. He's in his late 40s. He lived in Chelmsford in the 1990s, so he's been here before, and he was briefly engaged to a village girl, but he disappeared suddenly before the wedding. He's known to have some very dodgy contacts, and he's believed to have a prison record, but he returned to Chelmsford to live and work in 2018, and he bought into the village store, and he now owns the three buildings. So before I go to the rest of the murder board, I just thought I'd read you the prologue, which is the opening of the book, which is where the body is discovered. They didn't have to get very close to the sprawled figure under the trees to see something was wrong. This may well have been a wild camper, although there was no sign of a tent or any other camping equipment, but it was clear the person in the red anorak was definitely not sleeping now. Celia Richardson gasped and grabbed her husband's arm, realizing they were undoubtedly looking at a dead body. And from the angle of the arms and legs, it didn't look as if they died peacefully in their sleep. "You stay here, lovey," insisted Roger, gripping his wife by both arms and pushing her gently down onto the bench by the side of the path. "I'll have a closer look." "Oh, Roger, do be careful." Celia looked around her with a shuddering feeling they were being watched. "Maybe we should leave and call the police. What if there's someone else still there?" "From the way the Jews soaked into that anorak, that body's been here for hours. I just want to check something first." Celia sat with her hands held to her mouth to stop them trembling as she watched Roger walk further along the path. He stopped, looked at the figure on the ground, and then walked back. Taking her hand, he pulled her to her feet and set off towards the main path. When she tried to say something, he just shook his head and kept walking. Once they were back by the lake, Roger pulled his phone out of his pocket and hit 999. Celia could hear the faint sounds of the call being answered and the usual question asked. "Police, please," he said. "We've just found a body in the woods in Stover Country Park." He was silent for a few minutes, then shook his head. "No, I touched nothing, but he's definitely dead." Yes, of course we'll stay here till someone arrives." "My name? Richardson, Roger Richardson. I live in Coomsford." He disconnected the call, then looked across at Celia, who was trying hard not to cry. "They said they'll be here as quickly as they can, but we're going to have to make a statement, so we could be here for a while. I'll give young Rowan a call. He's got nothing major on at the moment. I'm sure he'll be willing to cover for us for a couple of hours." After making the second call, Roger put his phone back in his pocket and sat on the bench next to Celia. He took her hand. "How are you doing, old girl?" he asked. "I'm okay." She tried to smile, but could feel her cheeks were stiff and knew it wouldn't fool Roger. "It's such a shock, that's all, finding a dead body in such a beautiful, peaceful place. And it's a terribly undignified way to go, a stranger in a strange place." When there was no response, she looked more closely at her husband, who was staring at his toe, digging it into the sandy soil in front of the bench. She suddenly got the feeling there was something he wasn't telling her. "Roger, what is it? What's the matter?" She felt him squeeze her hand, and a sudden thought hit her. He wasn't a stranger, was he? "Roger? Roger, oh my God, it's someone we know, isn't it?" Roger turned to face her fully. She saw him inhale slowly and steeled herself, knowing what he was about to say was not something she wanted to hear. "You're going to have to be very brave, my darling," he said. "I'm afraid I do know that person. We both do." He paused and took another deep breath. "It's Stanley, Celia. It's Stanley Wentworth lying there under the trees." So that's the prologue. That's the starting point. We know right from the beginning, well, we know on the back of the book that it's Stanley who was killed. And we then go back about 3 weeks and see a series of scenes and incidents where you meet different people who are possible suspects in the murder. So by the time we get back to the point where Stanley is murdered and the investigation begins, we've got a fair amount of information to start sort of pulling the puzzle apart. So what I'm going to do now, oh, I should have said this, it should be quite obvious, but Stanley's not particularly popular in the village. I'm going to introduce you to a few people who are contacts, friends, acquaintances, whatever, of Stanley and are possible suspects in his murder. So Amelia Johnson is in her mid-40s, but she looks younger. She's lived in Coomsford for about 10 years, and when Stanley bought the village store, she went to work for him there. She is an astute businesswoman. She's helping him develop the business very, very well. But there are rumours that she has designs on Stanley. Now, whether that's designs on Stanley as a person, or whether that's designs on Stanley as a businessman who might be a good source of future income, I don't know. But well, I do know, but we don't know. But anyway, she has designs on Stanley. And then we have Maureen Walsh. She's Irish. She was brought up in Birmingham. She's in her early 50s, but she definitely dresses younger. I know the phrase "mutton dressed as lamb" is not a nice one and not one that one would normally use, but I have heard it said of Maureen on occasion. She is the daughter of one of Stanley's old bosses in the days when he had a less legitimate business. So one of the old gang bosses that he was involved with, Maureen is that boss's daughter, and she's also Stanley's ex-wife. And she's come back into the village and hopes to, or she's come to the village the first time she's been there, and she hopes to rekindle their relationship. And does she need to eliminate her rival? That's a question we also need to think about. Now, meet young Rory Black. I have to apologise that the quality of the photograph of him is not wonderful, but the only picture that we have of Rory shows him almost completely naked, and I really didn't want that for the presentation. So this is young Rory Black. He's in his early 20s and he has an unfortunate line in earrings. He's got one of those earlobe things that gets bigger and bigger. Annie hates it and tuts every time he comes into the bar. And then he has other earrings on the other side. He rides a motorcycle. He comes from the Midlands, and he tells Charlie that he's in Chelmsford to look up an old friend who may or may not owe him a favour. But he definitely gives the impression that he's looking for a fresh start away from the city. And then we have the man of mystery, Mr. Daniel Esposito. He's Italian, he's in his late 30s. Stanley tells Amelia that Daniel is an old friend of his, but Amelia is present when Stanley first sees Daniel when he arrives at the village, and she's fairly certain that Stanley does not give Daniel a warm welcome at all. So she's not convinced that he's as good a friend as he makes out. He tells Charlie that he's part of a family of Italian restaurateurs, not Pizza Hut type restaurants, but Italian fine dining, and that they've got a lot of restaurants in Somerset, which is the county just to the north of us in Devon, and he's come into Devon to look for a suitable venue for a fine dining restaurant, and he's looking at Chelmsford as a possibility for that. Frankly, Charlie doesn't believe a word of it, and she thinks it's a ruse. And then we have Celia and Roger Richardson, who we've already met because they were the two that found the body in the country park. They're both in their mid-40s. They have lived in the village all their lives. They were born within days of each other. Celia's parents ran the cafe, and so they were always very busy. Celia spent a lot of her childhood at Roger's house with him and his parents, and they've been together almost all their lives. They now run the cafe and grocery store on the village green. They're the ones who find Stanley's body, and they've both had issues with Stanley in the past. Roger, as we know, because he's the village store, when it's set up, is very much direct competition to the grocery that they have in Cozy Corner, and particularly at a time when the economic system has been tanked by lockdown and everything, having another competitor in the same small village is not good. So Roger's not happy with Stanley for that reason, and Celia is the girl that Stanley jilted back in the 1990s. So they've certainly had issues with Stanley in the past, but maybe they do have in the present as well. So I think it's fair to say that Stanley Wentworth has upset lots of people in his life, but who is upset enough to kill him? Is it the astute businesswoman who might have designs on his fortune, his ex-wife, the young mysterious stranger who's looking for a fresh start, the Italian supposed restaurateur, the business rival, or the former girlfriend who, although she says she's forgotten about it, still in the back of her mind is still not forgiven Stanley for what he did to her as a teenager. And if you want the answer to that question, then I'm afraid you're going to have to buy the book. So thank you very much. Alexa, I'll stop sharing my screen and come back online. Yes?
I love it. Yes, that was fun. What a great presentation, and what a great way to bring people in who haven't read the book yet into kind of what they're getting into. I like that, and I like having a better image of what the characters are and what you were trying to achieve, or what you achieved with each of them as well. All right, so does anyone have the next thing we were going to do is Q&A, right? Or did we have something else in the agenda?
I didn't put the agenda in front of me. Yeah, I think that was it. Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
I see Leslie has a question. If anyone else has a question, feel free to drop it in the chat or the Q&A, so that we can ask these questions. But Leslie's question was, how did you create your charming and accurate maps? Great question.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. I'm not an artist by any means, and I started off with a very broad outline of what I wanted the village to look like. And there's a teenager here in town who I've known since they were about 10 or 11, and they used to come to my writing workshops and refused to use words at all, and were always using pictures. So I knew that this teenager was a keen artist, and I'm friends with their mother. So had a word and said, do you fancy having a go at doing the map? And I talked through the concept, and they took it away and did the first map. Got it probably about 80% right first time round, and we changed a few things and redid it. And so the basic map, the first one, went in the first book. And I mean, it's actually quite small. And one of the things I'm learning, particularly because, you know, I write the short stories as well, based in the village, is that there aren't enough buildings. I'm going to have to spread it out, and bring in parts of other towns and that as well, because otherwise there just isn't enough venue in there to do things. But then when I wrote the second book, I said to Otis, shall we, you know, just take a part of it and expand it? And they were at our book launch on Tuesday night, and I said there, you know, I'm already doing the next one, and the next one's set in the church. So we're going to have to go back to the churchyard and do that one for the next book.
You know, it's really interesting because a lot of people think about world building just as related to fantasy, like that's when you hear about it. But the reality is, every time you write any book that has any kind of setting that's important and things that happen, like, you have to build that world. I think it was a fantastic idea to really create the map and make sure you have all the places and things that you needed. I love it.
And the other thing I should say is that the pub is very loosely based on a pub that's about 1.5 miles down the road from the town I live in. So, and I wanted somewhere that had enough green fields around it that conceivably it could be a village.
Yeah.
So that gave us the starting point.
Wonderful. Michelle wants to know if you start writing the story with the murderer or the murder victim.
I always start with the victim.
Interesting.
The first two, I had no idea who done it until I wrote my way through it. I can't remember. I heard a quote the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but it's quite a famous writer, I think, who said, "Why would I want to write a book that I already know the ending of?" So I work my way through to it. The one I'm just starting at the moment, whereas the other two, we start with the finding the body. The one I'm starting now, the prologue is actually the murder, and I know who done it, why, and who all the suspects are. So it's going to be a very different process for me this time round, and I'm interested to see how that will work.
Well, that was one of the questions that I personally had for you, whether you're a plotter or a pantser, whether you just let these play out, or whether you have that vision in mind when you begin.
I'm a plantser, because I write my first draft in November during NaNoWriMo, and for the non-writers online, NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, and it's an international challenge that a lot of writers give themselves to write 50,000 words in a month, and it's about throwing out the editor and just concentrating on creativity. And I do my first draft in November each year. And what I normally do is I normally have about 6 or 8 scenes plotted out fairly well, and then so I'll get to day 6 or 8 of November and I'll have run out, and then I'll either try and follow it through, and if I get stuck, what I then do is I say, okay, these are the characters, let's take 2 characters, stick them in a room together and see what happens. So quite often by the end of November, I've got the beginning and the end, I've got part of how we get there, and then I've got a number of disparate scenes that I can play jigsaws with.
I love that. That's fun. I'm getting geared up for NaNoWriMo. Whoop. I have no idea what I'm going to write about yet, but it's always a good fun time. All right. Sheila has a question for you. If you have partly answered this, but how many victims can you envision? I can't speak today. Yeah. In future stories before you need to expand the population.
Yeah, that's the Midsummer Murders phenomenon. Yes, you're right. It's already with what was it, 1.5 bodies in the first one and at least 1 in the second one. We're already sort of stretching the limits of credibility in a small village. So what they do in Midsummer is you have lots of different villages and you spread it around. So I might do that. I might have it so that the murder takes place in Chudley or Newton Abbot or Exeter or, somewhere further around, but that there's a link. You can link it back to the people in the village. I'm hoping I can do at least 6 before I start sort of running out. But yeah, otherwise we're just going to have to build another town over the other side of the A38.
There you go. There you go. Well, it's fun. I am enjoying reading the murder mysteries. I got away from them. I used to love thriller, suspense, murder mystery, and then of course I got into my rom-com kick. But this relit a fire under me of the murder mystery and suspense type books. So well done. Well, that is all the questions that we have. Is there anybody else who wants to jump in with anything else? Or by all means, please, in the chat box, please, share with Kate what you loved. Elizabeth, share what you loved, what you, I don't know, anything you want to share. This is your opportunity. I'm kind of sad that we're in a webinar right now instead of a meeting, so that you can't have the opportunity to say something to her, but I would love it if you would at least put in the chat what you would love to say if we were all in person together.
And we could have a glass as well. I mean,
we could have a glass. I've got my water. I've got
water. Yes.
I can't hit anything exciting, but all right. Lisa says, fantastic launch party. Looking forward to book 3. Yay. And as people are thinking about what to say on the spot there, did you have anything else that you would like to share with them? I dropped the Amazon link. I'm going to drop it again for anybody who hasn't done it. While you're thinking about what you want to say, I just want to again remind people, whatever you can do to support an author as they're getting their books out, like these first few days and weeks are really important as trying to get book sales up and reviews out. So leave your reviews, but share an image of the cover with the link to wherever it's available on social media, on your Facebook. If you're an author and you write similar genres, send out something in your newsletter to support Elizabeth. This is the way we can really all help each other during these times. And if you're not an author and you're just a friend, you can still share it on your social media or let people know. Or I'm sure, do you do book club appearances?
I do, yes. I haven't done them for, well, I guess lockdown has really sort of caused stop that. I do WI appearances and U3A, which is the University of the Third Age, which is a sort of a over 55 group here. So I do those sort of things. And actually, Although, as you know, Alexa, I've been working with you guys to try and build up my online presence. I think Mountjoy was the first one where I actually sold more ebooks than physical books.
Wow.
I'm not saying I was selling huge numbers, but I was better at selling them face to face than online, you know, so that's something I'm working on. One thing I should say is that everything is now on Kindle Unlimited, so if anybody is a Kindle Unlimited member, they can download it and read it for free.
Lovely.
That's an option.
Nice.
I noticed Sheila's put a question there. If your stories were to be televised, any thoughts on who you would cast? Thanks, Sheila. I could have done with some notice of that one. I'll get back to you on that one on the WhatsApp in the morning.
That sounds good. All right. And then Linda wanted to know what types of books you read as a child.
Enid Blyton, I mean, bearing in mind that I was a child, I'm a child of the 50s and the 60s, and actually that was in the days when we really looked forward to Christmas and birthdays because we got a book as a present.
Yeah.
So Enid Blyton, the old classics like The Water Babies, Black Beauty, Little Women, is still one of my favorite stories, favorite books of all time. And then I discovered Tolkien and Alan Garner. So I actually read almost as much fantasy as I do crime. But I've never managed to write any fantasy, but that's the sort of thing that I read as a child. Are you watching? I'm not watching these questions.
Yes. So tell us about your experience at the library, Suzanne asks.
What experience at the library?
I don't know. Suzanne, can you clarify which experience at the library is she telling us about? And just quickly, I think this is an interesting point too. And for the authors in the room, Dee said that she loved the being in Devon. It was joyful to read about the locality. And that's something that, you know, you can always put into your marketing too, is talking about the fact that it's set in a place where people live in the area. A lot of people really enjoy that. She said how successful the promotion was at the library, Anne says.
Are you talking about the library event from last week?
I'm going to guess that's a yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. That was because I should explain, I'm a member of the Crime Writers Association, and a number of us are doing almost like a road show at the moment. We've got 5 different authors, all with different genre, all within crime, and we do a little bit about our books within that genre. And because one of the other authors is Stephanie Austin, who is a cozy writer from just around the corner from here, I do my thrillers. So the library event was counterfeit, deception and corruption, and interestingly enough, it was very successful. It was very well attended. There were 40 people there. But what is the main characteristic of people who are in libraries? They don't buy books.
Check out books.
Books. Yeah. So the library bought a copy of everyone's books, and they've got them there, and they're encouraging them to go out and buy them. But in terms of a sales event, it wasn't wonderful. But literary festivals, Christmas fairs are great. And I have to say that I'm finding it much easier at a Christmas fair or whatever to say, you know, these 2 books are set just down the road, than to say this book's set in Southern Africa. It's, you know, people are much happier buying something that's about just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been so much fun, and I am just thrilled for you. And I am so hoping that we will get to see each other in person in May.
Absolutely.
That will be a blast. And I want to, thank you. We're in a writing group together, as are a handful of the ladies who are on this webinar today. And it's just been such a joy being part of your process, being supported by you and supporting you in return. And just thank you for all of that. And congratulations.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being the host today and running this for me, Alexa. It's been really great. Thanks to everyone. What I should say is, amongst this list, not only I said, I've got friends, relatives and people from all over the place online, but I've also got several of you are either alpha or beta readers or ARC readers, and I'm really grateful for the support you've given me. As Alexa says, reviews are critical. They're really important as a way of raising our visibility, but just the fact that people are willing to spend time looking at our books, giving us feedback is really very helpful. So thank you all very much for that.
Agreed. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And we will see you. I'll see some of you very shortly. Have a great day.
Okay. Thanks, Alexa. Thanks, everyone. Bye.